Hi, my name is Tara Kachaturoff, and I'm the host of Michigan Entrepreneur, where we feature businesses from startup to stellar. Today I have as my special guest Cindy Clement, who is the author of Your Body's Environmental Chemical Burden. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Tara. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I'm really excited. This is part 2 of a 2-part series that we're talking about nutrition and your book and all sorts of things about what you do in your business. And we're going to continue our discussion on your body's environmental chemical burden. This is the book. This came out at the end of 2018. And I received a copy so I could review it for the program. I really enjoyed it. There's a lot in this book. And to start off, why don't you give us a summary of what this book is about, and then I'll unpack it from there.
Okay. So the book is a resource guide to help people understand which chemicals they can avoid exposure to. In a nutshell, that's what it is. The research that I did to find out the chemicals we do have control over, and most of them are what we rub on our skin, what we are ingesting, as well as, to a certain extent, the air that we're breathing.
Okay, and who is this book directed to? Is there a particular target audience for this book, or is it just a book for everybody? I mean, I think it's a book for everybody, but
it is for everyone, but primarily my passion is in educating these young millennials today, because their generation and the generation that follows will actually they will suffer the consequences more so of these chemical exposures than any other generation before them.
And I think we're really seeing it in the incidence of disease at younger and younger levels of things that you used to hear about somebody in their 80s and 90s getting.
That's right.
Where 20 and 30-year-olds are getting these things, and it's unbelievable.
It is. These chemicals affect not only our hormonal balance, but they affect our immune system. They increase our risk of cardiovascular disease, of cancer, of diabetes, of obesity, as well as interrupting normal brain functioning. So when I see the acts of aggression, when I'm seeing what I see as abnormal, aberrant behavior, I can't help but know that there is some link. I'm not saying it's the only issue involved, but there is some link with these chemicals and the way that people are behaving today.
Oddly, when I was in college, I'm very aware about my environment and how things influence me, and I'm always noting those things. I discovered when I was a freshman in college that things that were yellow were causing problems until I finally understood it was yellow dye, and then I learned how to avoid yellow dye, and that meant things on popcorn. I read every label, and I finally read a book called The Mood Cure years ago,
I know that
where
book.
I finally saw somebody who finally documented that yellow dye creates this kind of problem in the brain, which was the experience I was having with the hyperactivity, not being able to turn off my brain. So I really, I've always been really concerned about that, because I am chemical sensitive. I can tell if I take a vitamin, I can feel it in me 20 minutes later. I can feel food going through my system. It's, so for me, I was very interested in this book, because I was like, it actually felt like a burden to read the book in some ways, because it's heavy stuff.
It is.
Because even this, as I was reading this book, I'm noticing a little more, because I was going to be meeting with you, all the articles that are out there. And just since the other day, other articles on things here in Michigan.
That's right.
And what's happening. And it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know how the human being thrives in this toxic melange that we live in. I don't know how the body is amazing to survive.
It is.
So why don't you tell us about the breakout of this book and how it's organized, and then let's talk about some of the things in it, just generally speaking, how is it organized?
Okay. Well, I'd like to share just a little bit about how I even came upon this. I never intended to write this book. This is just something that happened. I had attended a lecture in the fall of 2013, And in passing, the presenter said body burden, and that was it. Never talked about it again, didn't really talk, explain anything about it. And afterwards, several days later, I would hear my brain going, body burden, trying to figure out what that was. I thought maybe it was the emotional burden that we all carry, or maybe it was the excess body fat that we carry. I couldn't figure it out, but it kept coming to me. So when I had some spare time, I just went to the at EMU into our database, and I typed in body burden. 420,000 research papers were at my fingertips, and I thought, whoa, I guess this is something, but what is it? A little daunting, 420.
Which is amazing because you've been in this area for a long time.
Right, and not to understand what that term was. So I narrowed it down to the previous 3 years. There were 123,000 studies still at my fingertips. So I just started opening them, like, what is this? Noticing the journal names, and they were all relating to the environment. And as I opened them, and I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, oh my word. So I asked my physician, my physician, I need to get my body burden tested. There's such a thing, and I want to have it done. So we ran the only test I could find that wasn't in a research.
It's a blood test?
It's blood and urine. And I did this test, very expensive, did this test, and it came back that me, a woman that had been organic since 1978 when I met Dr. Watkins, had used the safest personal care products, the safest cleaning products, because I was chemically sensitive as well. For me to be in the 95th percentile on some of those chemicals, the 80th percentile.
And organic since the 70s.
It was crazy. It was crazy.
Unbelievable.
And in the 95th percentile, that means out of 100 people, only 5 people had levels that were greater than mine.
Right.
So I started just researching on my own to try and figure out, how was I exposed? What are these chemicals? How do I get rid of them? It was a personal project. It was not a book. It was not a book. But after an entire year of doing this, I just asked myself one day, I wonder if anybody else would be interested in what I've uncovered, and it's history. Yeah.
And it's interesting because we're living in Michigan. I mean, I'm not a native. I moved here about 25 years ago, but I think in Michigan, because of all the industry, I bet Michiganders have higher levels and probably people in New Jersey.
That's exactly right. It's New Jersey and Michigan.
Yeah. Do you know that study-wise?
Yes, I
really?
do that.
So
yes.
It's really
yes.
interesting.
Their water is a mess in New Jersey, just like ours is here. In fact, there was an article that was published, and I just put it on my social media today, that the state of New Jersey is now penalizing polluters, these big corporations. They have to pay for the cleanup. To me, that's a no-brainer.
Right.
Why aren't they cleaning this stuff up? So DuPont and 3M and all these companies now, they've got to start cleaning up their waters. So good for them.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, and what year is it? That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
This stuff's been going on forever. And it's funny that I said Michigan and New Jersey, because those I know, like chemical dumps. I mean, absolute dumps. And yeah, I bet we have a higher incidence of cancer than other places.
There's actually a map that the government puts out, and it's called Superfund National Priority Sites. And it's a map. And on this map, wherever there's a red dot, there's a current cleanup for the EPA to be done. And then a little tiny yellow, you can find one here and there. Those are the ones they've cleaned up. No, green is the one they cleaned up. The yellow are the proposed.
Okay.
But when you look at that map, it's really, it's that whole northeast and the Michigan and the Rust Belt area where we're really in trouble here. We really are.
Yeah, it's just sad.
So we have to have a resource to show people, give them a glimmer of hope of what they can possibly control, because we can. We can control what goes in our mouth and on our skin. And like I said, just a little bit about how, the air that we breathe, and I give some ideas and, how to do that.
One of the things I actually just saw yesterday, oh gosh, where was it? The pristine countryside, was it in Germany? I can't remember. But they are testing the air, and there are all these nanoparticles that are absolutely, utterly toxic out in the country. So there really is no escaping. And I was just reading about something with they're finding cocaine and other types of things inside of shrimp and other things, and just, in fresh water, it's just a rolling disaster, so to
really
speak.
is.
I mean, it's like, and I'm thinking when I was coming here, as I'm spraying my hair, which I only wear hairspray once a month,
Right.
but I'm thinking of you as I'm putting it on my hair and putting the makeup. I only wear makeup once a month too, because I don't want that stuff on my skin.
Right.
It's completely toxic. It's completely absorbed.
You can find
And
safer ones.
And
Yeah.
women, especially, they put
they do.
stuff on their skin more than others, and they have this very sensitive thing, and they're going to have kids, and just the whole type of thing. So one thing I saw, and I wanted you to comment on this. This was about what they call BPA's, that
Bisphenol A.
Bisphenol A, which is the water bottle stuff. So is it that they do have it or they don't have it? They do have-
BPA is a chemical used in plastics.
and is it the good thing or the bad thing?
It's a bad thing.
It's the bad thing.
They're all bad things.
Right, but I mean, that's the bad thing. So they say no BPA, that means it's better. However, I just read an article yesterday
Just going to tell you, yes.
about how they said the alternative isn't even tested, and they're
That's
saying
exactly
it's
right.
better, which
That's
is scary.
That's exactly
'Cause
what I
it's
was
not
going to tell you.
regulated.
They said, okay, well,
God, it's
BPA is
amazing.
bad, so we'll
Put
give you this
something
new
else.
chemical. And so in the
Which has-
chemical world, truly, this is what I believe. They put it out there and they say, it's innocent until proven guilty.
Right.
It's like,
Right.
here, we'll just see what happens,
Right.
and if bad things happen, well, we'll make a new chemical
And we'll all
out
be
of it.
dead by the time the lawsuit comes
There
out.
was
right?
a really, this beautiful woman, her name is Wangari Maathai, and she was a renowned Kenyan environmental activist, won a Nobel Peace Prize. She has an amazing quote, and I love it. It's the generation that destroys the planet is not the generation that pays the price, and that is the problem.
Wow, that is
Powerful.
a great quote.
Powerful. So like I say, it's these millennials and these Generation Zs. My 3 grandchildren are in Generation Z. I'm looking at the planet that we are leaving them, and it's horrifying to me. It's horrifying to me to know.
What's fascinating to me is that you've got the FDA that is so, it's supposedly regulating things, and they regulate vitamins because those are so scary, right? And
Right.
then they supposedly have all these drugs that are developed. They have to go through all the steps of whatever to see their safety. Yet you're saying there's 80,000 chemicals out there. They're not going through any kind of regulation. They are to a point, I guess, by classes probably
Yeah.
of carcinogens or whatever. But how is it that they're worried about a vitamin or something like that, but they're not worried about
That's
a
not actually
chemical?
not their department.
Oh,
So
it
the
isn't there?
FDA is what
Oh.
goes in your mouth.
Oh, I see.
And the Consumer Safety Product Commission works on
The chemicals?
topical, and it's the Environmental Protection Agency that is in charge
of
of
the
all of
chemicals.
that.
So-
but we don't have a very strong EPA right now because the powers that be in our country are not interested in really securing and funding and staffing.
Well,
the
why?
EPA.
So even though we're breathing in air that's toxic, that's not going to be covered by, those chemicals are not going to be, even though we're ingesting them, that's not going to come under FDA.
No, it's an EPA
So they
thing.
don't talk to each other.
No.
Okay, so
no,
I
there
have
is
no
no
idea.
one single agency sanctioned to
see.
look at the whole big picture. They all have their own little
okay.
piece.
I see. I didn't
Yeah.
really realize how that all worked.
Yeah.
That's why it doesn't work. I
Yeah.
see. Because I was wondering, like, well, these things, what about, this whole nanoparticle thing, which is absolutely the worst. Because even stuff from pants you're wearing that are
Right.
made with nanoparticles, they're sloughing off and going into
Into
your
skin.
system.
Yeah,
Literally
yeah.
going into your skin. Like, even our clothing can be toxic. It's amazing when you think about it. Like, these pants are made out of oil. These are polyester
Yeah.
jeans. So they're actually unhealthy.
Yeah. So even back in the 70s,
Right,
Dr.
yeah,
Bernard Jensen taught us wear cotton,
Cotton, yeah,
wool, and leather.
right.
Oh, and silk, because silk is the silkworm.
Yeah.
Those were the 4 he said were
Right.
and this was, my goodness, 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And he's preaching these are the only safe materials to put on your body. He was light years ahead of his time. He
Yeah.
really was.
Not to mention those other materials create all that static, which messes up your vibration connection to the earth. It's just one rolling mess.
So he
after
used to
that,
say, to get to kind of discharge, to walk barefoot on the earth, to stand barefoot on the earth for just a couple of minutes a day to discharge.
He was doing it
brilliant.
yesterday.
Were you really?
Yeah.
Isn't that awesome?
It helps my health to do that. I know it sounds weird. I can't do it in the winter, but yeah, it really, I can feel the difference.
And he said that women that were nervous or high-strung should have long hair and not short hair, because there was something, I'm going back so many years, it's hard for me to remember everything, but I remember him saying that if you are tend to be a high stress, but always have long hair, and that will help to relax. So he had all these wonderful little things that back then were laughed at, but you're starting to see people really pay attention to his work.
That's interesting. One of the things that I was concerned about when I was reading just the back of the book is enough to educate you on things. I've already shared this with a couple people online, was that scientists found an average of 287 chemicals, and this is a few years ago, this is not current.
10 years ago.
10 years ago, in the umbilical cords of babies. That's unbelievable.
It is.
Can you speak a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So what happens is, because we are exposed on a daily basis to, like I say, many chemicals, many of these chemicals are stored in our tissue. They bioaccumulate in our tissue.
And is that the burden piece?
Yeah, that's our burden. That's our body burden, is storing these chemicals into our body, in our body, and the health effects that they have. But when a female gets pregnant, her body detoxes. It sloughs off these chemicals into that developing infant and continues through breast milk. So my passion, my message is to the millennials, because I strongly feel that it is possible to detoxify many of these chemicals from the body. If we can teach this to these young millennials, to detoxify their bodies before conceiving, before bringing children into this world, this next Gen Z is going to have an easier time. We have to release that burden, because think about it. They come in with 287, and then we're rubbing, creams, and they're breathing air, and they're eating these bad foods, and it compounds. And this is a time of life when the organs and functioning of the body are developing. We now know, and this is worldwide known, the World Health Organization, United Nations, knows that there are obesogenic chemicals, meaning that when that developing infant is exposed to an obesogen in an early age, it can interrupt the normal functioning of their metabolism and their body's production of fat and all of those systems, and create this increase in obesity across their lifespan. And this is crazy. So if we can get these, my message, honestly, someday I'm going to be in an auditorium filled with millennials, teach them how to stop the madness. That's, to me, and it's possible if we can educate.
Yeah, and one of the things that was really interesting to me as I was reading this, I put my blinders on to a lot of this. I mean, we try to do what we can to not have some of these things, but sometimes I'm busy and I will eat things out of a can. And I usually eat more salads, but you know what? Think about everything I put in my salad, strawberries, and everything in it is like toxic too. And it doesn't matter that it's organic, because organic is not clean either. If the soil's not clean, it doesn't matter. So it just feels like you can't win with this. But what's the ray of hope you can give people?
The ray of hope is learning about detoxification, and by that I mean simple things. There is something called chlorophyll. And chlorophyll typically comes
tablets.
Chlorophyll tablets, liquid chlorophyll.
Does that help?
It
those chlorophyll
does.
tablets? Because I just take them because my sister said take them.
There is research that shows that liquid chlorophyll is great for inflammatory bowel disorders, for healing the bowel, for helping to detoxify the body. There are some supplements that are, in fact, at the University of Wisconsin, they have a division, family medicine, and it's their integrative and functional medicine website, and it's FAMED, FAMMED.edu, WISC, I think WISC is in there somewhere for Wisconsin, but anyway, there's a 12-page detoxification PDF file that a person can download, and they can see like which supplements help, which which types of food should I be eating.
It's an
amazing, and the reference is in the book on how to download it. But it's an amazing document, and it's science-based, and there is research on how to get this stuff out of the body. One of my big time dreams is to, before I pass, I want to see that when people have their annual physical, that their body burden is measured, and we know which chemicals are in their body, and that protocols are developed so that people can detox. And that is the only way we can make this happen on this crazy earth, because there is no planet B right now. We don't have a planet B.
Yeah, they do kind of need one. But one of the things that just seems kind of impossible, because you're still, your kids are going to a school that has carpeting. It could have been recently painted. They're eating with plasticware. I mean, there's all sorts of things where we're picking up these kinds of things. And I'll tell you, when I was going to pick up a piece of plasticware yesterday, because I use a lot of that, I picked up stainless steel because I was thinking about you.
Good. And bamboo. They have these little bamboo ones now that you can travel with. So, yeah.
So I was like, oh my gosh. But I can't make myself crazy about it, but
No,
I
you
have to be
can't.
aware of it. But what I don't understand is, when you look at the reproductive cycle and how we keep reproducing, I don't get how the human in general will get healthier because we're all getting sicker. Do you know what I mean? We keep reproducing, and then you have a different, the whole mix is different. The chromosome, what you're picking up from the prior generation, how do you make something that's starting to change biologically? Because these things are hormonal interrupters, right? So they're actually changing male and female characteristics, body characteristics. I mean, they've proven that for years with all the junk that
they put in the milk. Yeah, remember the whole milk, the growth hormones in the milk that they did?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I don't understand what will become, or maybe we shouldn't think there for 5 generations from now.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying.
It's scary.
That's the education to me, is educating, like prenatal work. I shouldn't even say prenatal. Prenatal work should consist of, you can't have children until you detox.
Right.
I know that'll never happen, but really, that's kind of the thought here, is we've got to get this out of this female's body, so she's not passing that on. I mean, yes, they're going to be exposed once they come into the world, but oh wow, what if they came in without 287 to start with?
And one thing that I don't believe you're, because I went through most of this book, but I don't think you're addressing, is just the chemicals in the prescription drugs.
Oh yeah, we didn't.
That isn't even addressed, and I've been reading some stuff about
methylparaben. I do cover it in the paraben section about how they put the parabens in the prescription drugs, but. Yeah. Oh, I couldn't even go there. Yeah. Because that's another book.
I've just been seeing, like in Neuroscience News, some of the connections they're making between women who had taken antidepressants and what's happening to the brains of their children, even when they're not on them. So these things are being carried in them too, and we don't even know what that is because it's not like they list it out for you what's in it. So I'm just. I don't know what to think.
It is. It's hard. It really is hard to know. But you just, it's just like with anything else in life, you do the best you can.
And there's a whole industry is obviously popping up around this.
Yeah.
But I think, one thing is you got to be careful about what these companies are saying and what you're believing about it. Because they say no BPA. Well, I just read yesterday how dangerous the other thing is, because they don't even know what it can do to you.
That's right. They just quickly create a new, okay, well, we'll take BPA out, but we'll use this instead.
Right.
And also, in Canada, they're really strict up there in Health Canada. They tested the new baby bottles that are supposed to be BPA free, and they found BPA in every single one. Smaller amounts, but they still found BPA. So, but again, it really is an overwhelming topic, and so you pick what goes in your mouth and on your skin, a little bit about, learning about when to open the windows in the home. Now, that's about as much control as we have, and that's the truth.
I've got about 3 minutes left, but I have to throw this one thing in. What's up with California, and why are they regulating so many things that other states won't do?
They've always done that. They were the first. They were the first state to outlaw thimerosal in vaccinations, the mercury. They are always ahead of the game.
And I grew up there. I didn't.
New York and California are the 2 states that tend to make the most of the regulations. Although this morning, Maine has now banned styrofoam containers.
Wow,
Maine.
that's fantastic.
Yeah, just this morning that was in
Yeah,
the
I didn't
news.
realize how awful those were either until I was reading your book. My God. All right, so throw that all out. So my very last question for you, I mean, I could probably talk to you for hours and hours, is what is your one piece of advice for folks when it comes to their health? If they could make one change today, what could they do that's easy and cost effective?
The easiest thing is get rid of the water bottles, get rid of those plastic water bottles, and I'm not kidding. The National Resources Defense Council tested bottled water. 25% of bottled water is tap water, untreated tap water. You might as well be drinking your own untreated. Most everybody's water is treated today. It's the best that we can get. But this bottled water, the migration of chemicals increases with heat and storage time. And these bottles are stored in hot garages. They're stored, in hot manufacturing facilities and warehouses. And and it's not just BPA, it's phthalates. It's all of these plastics chemicals are in that water. Get a stainless steel, a glass, something, and get rid of those plastic bottles. And they're also destroying our oceans because it's all ending up there.
Oh, lots to take in here.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Cindy Clement, author of Your Body's Environmental Chemical Burden, available on Amazon and at your bookseller. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely. If you'd like more information about our program, please visit us at www.michiganentrepreneurtv.com. Please join us again in the future when I interview another enterprising entrepreneur. Until then, wishing you the best of business.